Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Assam and Nagaland sign deal to reduce tension along the border. What is the context? The northeastern states of Assam and Nagaland have entered into an agreement where they want to withdraw the forces along the border areas to de-escalate the tensions between both the states. So the article here is speaking about the border disputes between the states of Assam and Nagaland. Before we understand what this article is all about, let's have a brief idea with respect to the background. Before 1963, there wasn't an independent state of Nagaland. Nagaland was part of Assam. So Nagaland came into picture only in the year 1963, where Nagaland was carved out of Assam's Naga Hills. So kindly remember, up until 1963, the entire area was called as Assam. Only in 1963, we had an independent state of Nagaland. What is the border dispute between Nagaland and Assam? Up until 1963, we didn't have much of dispute because Nagaland was part of Assam. But since it was carved out of Assam, Nagaland believes that there were some parts of Nagaland which had to be given to Nagaland. But Assam feels that there isn't anything like that, as there was a boundary that was constitutionally decided as on December 1, 1963. So Assam says whatever is the boundary that was decided by the government of India according to the rules and regulations, as per this, it will be an independent state of Assam and an independent state of Nagaland. So as defined constitutionally on 1963, that will be a demarcated area. However, according to Nagaland, there is a 16-point agreement which led to the creation of Nagaland. According to it, there were certain territories which were captured by British during the 1826. Those parts of the Naga Hills should also be part of Nagaland, says Nagaland. So what is the dispute here? According to Nagaland, some parts which are currently under Assam will have to go back to Nagaland, says Nagaland. As a result, there is a dispute between both these states. Assam and Nagaland share a border of about 434 km, and in this there are places like Sivasaga, Jorhat, Golaghat, Karbi Anglong districts where Nagaland insists that few parts will have to go to Nagaland, which is where there is a major dispute between Nagaland and Assam. How frequent is this border friction? Since Nagaland does not accept this constitutionally drawn boundaries that happened in the year 1963, Nagaland insists that there has to be a new border that has to be drawn, because of which there are skirmishes and tussles between both these states, and ultimately this has also resulted in major clashes and violence in the year 1968, in the year 1979, in the year 1985 and 2014. In order to mitigate the impact in the past, we have had the central government take up initiatives. It has spoken to both the chief ministers of the state, and in fact, we also have the Supreme Court of India, which had also appointed a three-member local commission headed by a retired Supreme Court judge to identify the boundary as well. So the Supreme Court has taken up the initiative. The union government has taken up the initiative. It has spoken to the chief ministers of both these states. In spite of this, there is a misunderstanding between both the states. And now, as part of one of the initiatives to de-escalate the tensions along the border areas, the chief secretaries of Assam and Nagaland have signed an agreement to de-escalate the tense situation prevailing at two locations in Desoi Valley Forest, Surokong Valley. So kindly remember these two areas of Desoi Valley and Surokong Valley, which is in news and can be asked in your preliminary examination. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, are states underreporting COVID-19 cases? The article here is speaking about fourth serological survey that was conducted by the Indian Council of Medical Research. Now the important question is, what is this serological survey? Whenever there is a virus, or let's say a foreign pathogen, when this foreign pathogen enters the body creates proteins. These proteins are called as the antibodies. This can happen on a natural basis where there is a natural immunity that is provided by the body against the foreign pathogen, or this can also be artificially induced as well. How is it artificially induced? Let's say we are taking up a vaccine. So when a vaccine is given to a person, it can also induce what is called as the artificial system of antibodies. So this article here goes on to check the number of people who already have the immunity in the form of antibodies. So the fourth serological survey was recently conducted by the Indian Council of Medical Research to check if people have antibodies or they are able to fight the menace of the COVID-19. Either it is naturally or it is by the artificial process. So according to the serological survey conducted by the Indian Council of Medical Research, it says that there is higher seroprevalence in the 45 plus age group. What does this mean? This means that the above 45 years of age people have more antibodies. These antibodies are more in the 45 plus age group primarily because this was the group which was given the vaccines initially. So when the government of India decided that it has to provide the vaccination, it took up the key criteria. One, it wanted to provide the vaccines to the healthcare workers, which is why the serological survey says that more than 85% of the healthcare workers have antibodies, and after the healthcare workers, it is the 45 plus age group where this article says that most of the antibodies are present in the 45 plus age group. So when you look into the statistics, the highest is seen in the healthcare workers, followed by the 45 plus age group. So what we see is antibodies development either because they have the natural immunity where they would have recovered from this particular menace, and at the same time there might also be a possibility that they are administered with vaccine. The article further goes on to say the antibody prevalence was lowest in the state of Kerala. It was highest in the state of Madhya Pradesh, along with the data from other 19 states as well. What is the significance of the serological survey? The findings from these national surveys can be used for targeted ramping up of the vaccination. What do we mean by it? It means that there might be a particular locality where the vaccination given in that locality might be comparatively less. So identify the area where the COVID cases are increasing, or identify an area where the COVID vaccination is comparatively less so that we can administer more in this locality. Added to this, we would be in a much better position to identify the high priority districts, and after the identification, suitable behavioral changes can also be brought about in this section. So basically, we would be able to ramp up the vaccination in those areas where we have less vaccination, and at the same time, we would also be able to bring behavioral changes where we have been seeing a spike when it comes to the COVID-19 infections. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India all set for UNSC presidency term. India was selected as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. It has a tenure of about 2 years. Its term began from 1st of January 2021. So what we will have is a 2-year term as a non-permanent member in the United Nations Security Council. It has now assumed presidency of the United Nations Security Council. As part of its presidency, what will it do? It will bring about the agenda for the month, coordinate important meetings, and it has also said that it wants to have some epicenter focus on some of the activities. This includes maritime security, peacekeeping, and counter-terrorism. First, let us discuss about what India has spoken about maritime security. India has clearly said that when it comes to the maritime security, there are issues of piracy. There are countries which are not allowing other countries' shipments to move through their waters, and at the same time, there is also increasing cases of maritime crime as well. So, preventing the maritime crime, preventing the piracy issues, and making sure that there is free open Pacific region is one of the agendas of maritime security. Added to this, India is believing in keeping up the peacekeeping operations. India is one of the largest troop contributing countries to the United Nations peacekeeping missions. It has nearly contributed 250,000 in troop numbers, and at the same time it contributes as many people as possible to the international peacekeeping operations. It now expects to launch one of the mobile applications called as Unite Aware. What is this Unite Aware? This will provide terrain information. It will improve the situational awareness for all the peacekeepers in that region. On the counter-terrorism front, it has acknowledged that India is one of the countries facing a large-scale terrorism from its western borders. We have a large-scale insurgency that is happening in the northeast as well, and at the same time, there are also issues from the non-state actors as well. So, being at the forefront of the counter-terrorism, India has said that it wants to emphasize to bring an end to the terrorism, which is why it is seeking to enhance the coordination between the United Nations organizations and the Financial Action Task Force, where money laundering will be looked into, and at the same time any linkage between the terror and the transnational crime will also be taken into picture to bring an end to the menace of terrorism. So basically, India wants to ensure that it has its focus on the maritime security, peacekeeping operations and counter terrorism. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says UN warns hunger is expected to rise in 23 global hotspots. The article goes on to say that there are about 2 United Nations agencies which have said that hunger is expected to rise in 23 global hotspots in the next 3 months, with the highest alerts of catastrophe situations in Ethiopia, southern Madagascar, Yemen, South Sudan, northern Nigeria. So these countries may face a lot of hunger, says the United Nations agencies. These countries are put under a lot of problem. Why? Because of the civil war, because of the internal disturbances, because of the foreign countries engaging in a proxy war in these countries, which is why these countries may face famine-like conditions, hunger, and this can result in death if suitable action is not taken on time, says the United Nations. Now it takes into picture some of the countries like Ethiopia, where it has said that there might be number of people facing starvation and death, and it is expected to rise to 4,01,000, which could be the highest after the 2011 famine in Somalia. So the highest number of people who will encounter hunger would be in Ethiopia, says the United Nations agency. Followed by this, in the southern Madagascar, it has been hit by the worst drought, and as a result, these people would be suffering as there is not enough food to eat. There are other issues like the pest affecting them, rising food prices. All of these will impact the African countries, says the United Nations. Overall, as many as 41 million people worldwide are now at the risk of falling into famine or famine-like conditions unless they receive immediate life and life-saving assistance. So the need of the hour is that all the countries will have to come together. The United Nations will have to take up a prerogative where suitable amount of food is provided to these people who are suffering from civil wars or other activities in the region. So these agencies have called for urgent humanitarian assistance to all these regions, or else people may die because of hunger, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about genome sequencing. What is this genome sequencing? What are the advantages of genome sequencing? What is it about genome sequencing and the projects has been explained in one of the videos by Samacha, and the link would be given in the description box. So kindly look into the video to understand what is this concept of genome sequencing. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, is RBI planning a digital currency for India? This article here has been explained on 26th of July recently as part of the second topic. So kindly look into the video to understand what is this digital currency for India all about. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Write a note on Assam-Nagaland border dispute. What do you understand by genome sequencing? Discuss the advantages and limitations of genome sequencing. So for those of you who want to write, get your answers evaluated from your fellow pals, please put it on the Byju's IAS website. We have created a new platform for you so that you can write, enlighten yourself, because UPSC examination is all about answer writing. If you are looking for something like an IAS or an IPS or an IFS, the most that matters is your marks. So how will you score your marks? You have to write as many answers as possible. So these questions will be posted on our Byju's website, where you would be able to upload an image. You would be also able to type in as a comment as well, so that you guys can have a peer review and also give feedback to your fellow pals as well. So please write as many answers as possible, so that you guys can have an idea about the answer writing. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.